Cool. So to work with forms, we need to understand how to get the value from fields. So let's quickly open another field, another quick file. Let's call it testinput.js, and here we're gonna import React and component from React, and then we're gonna have a class testinput extends component, and we're gonna return an input type text value equal this state to val, and then change equals this will handle change and state. So we're gonna initialize a file with something, and then we're gonna have a handle change method that reads the onChange from the input itself. Is not happy.
We need to render.
Cool. So handle change equals, always use the arrow function with these type of events, and then we're gonna get the value from e.target.value, and then we are going to set the state of val to val, or we could just do it like that. What?
Constructor.
We don't need the constructor. If we can set the state like this, the initial state. So the constructor, we use it if we want to like bind the function with this, but we're not going to need it because using the arrow function, which uses this of the class itself, and or to initialize a state, which we can do in this format. So I think that this is a little bit simpler. Then we can confirm that we can read this value using a label or p tag, and then say this state.val. So this is how we read an input tag, and then just gonna export default test input. Just wanna test this quickly. So we have something here, we change it, we can read the value and do something else with it. But what if we have a lot of items? We have a big form. So let's make this a little bit bigger and type a test form. So this should be a form with some fields. And we have this text. So start with a dev and label saying this is a name, and we have the input that's going to read from state.name /dev. Here we can say name is list state.name, and from the E we're going to save name. So we have the form here that starts with
named it friend, so the class. Yeah, but that doesn't actually care because if you export default, it will just work like that. So. Anyway.
Actually, tablet so from form, and then in app form. Cool. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. The thing is that actually, and that's actually, to be honest, I don't completely know why it's like that. But if you export default test form, even if you have a different class name,
so
it will work. You understand what I mean? Like you could name it whatever you want.
So if you have XYZ here,
yeah, that will work. No,
XYZ here.
No, if you have different name in the export default and in the class name, it will take the export default and it will work fine.
There you can change, but from down you name it text form, something like that. Yeah.
So if you have test form like you had before, or like that,
like something like this.
Yes, and if you import the export, if you import how you calling it in the export default, it will work fine without the. So it basically it will ignore the class name that you are giving it.
From there,
you understand what I mean?
You name it text form from down, then you can change any name from the
we
class.
don't care about the class name.
Yeah.
Even
when you are exporting default,
yeah,
it doesn't care about which
the class
name you give to the class.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But how would I? How would
you can test it, for example.
the test form down.
For example, write test form or whatever you had before, right? And now try to have it as you have.
Well, if I understand correctly, the name, it doesn't care what I export with name here when I import it. So if I type here export default XYZ and import here test form, it's going to work. But this is going to break because I'm trying to export something that doesn't exist in the file.
The thing is that actually when you do export default, it's going to see the name of the file. And because the name of your file is test form, it's going to work. And it's going to ignore the class name that you're giving it there. And if you test it, it's going to work. I'm very convinced. We see that. It doesn't work?
Yeah. So I think I know what you mean. So this is export. If we have multiple classes, how would it know that I want to export this one? So I have another class called actually test form that extends a class and test form 2 and test input. If I export like this, it looks for the name that I'm exporting here. But what you're saying is right. If this is test form, I'm exporting as default as test form, then I can import it with whatever name I want. So I can do this. This is exactly what you mean.
Okay.
Then it's not going to care about the name of the file or the name of the export because I'm importing the default one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
But
yeah, you're right. You're right. That's okay. Yeah.
It's a little bit confusing though.
Yeah, it is.
It's like you could type like from here and then import it something else and like it works like what's going on? So yeah. But if you so it's only if you export default. If you export by the name, like you could export the class. Can you do this? So if you export this and then export something else here, you can import, but the struct the same. Yeah. But if you have only one thing, it makes sense to.
It's just a small observation. Of course, it's important to have the same class name as you're exporting. It was just a small observation.
Yeah. Within the file, it has to be with the name. Outside, it doesn't matter. But yeah, good catch. Cool. So in the test form now we just have a quick form with only one input field that we get the data from it, and in handle change it's still handle change. So let's name it handle name change, and now we're gonna get the value of the name, and here we get the name. Okay, we need another field. So let's do it like this, and let's name this. What should we name it?
Email. Yes.
Email. So here we're gonna read from email, and we're gonna take the function handle email change, and then we're gonna have here email. And we're going to initialize the email as empty string and have another function for handle email. we go back, we have the name, we have the email. Well, this works, but does this mean that for every field we're going to have to do this nonsense? Of course not. So this is the simplest way just to get a value and handle a function and save it somewhere, like the quickest option. If we have one field, it makes sense. If we have two, yeah, it doesn't really matter, but it looks bad. But what if you have 10? What if you have like an undefined number, like dynamic stuff? So one way to do this is to set the name of the input. So we can set this name equals the name of the field, just save it as name. And here we have the name equals email. And then we would have one handle function for all of them. So we're going to handle change, handle input change. We're going to take the event as usual. And then we're going to set the state dynamically. So we're going to set the state with the name of the field that is sent to me. So now I'm updating either the name or the email. And I know that I named the fields name and email. So now I can set the state with the name that is dynamically sent to me. So I could do this, which is in JavaScript, I could define the key dynamically, not just the value. So here I say that my key is e.target.name. So I will update the state with the name of the field and the value of the field. I'm going to comment these, and then I'm going to use the same function for both of them. And if we go back, I still have the same result. And then if I want to add another one, I have message, and then I will just name this field message, and it will read from message, and then I just add message here, this will state of message. 1, 2, 3, still works. So it's much easier to work with. So these are text fields. We can have other types as well. So let's check the React forms. Let's go through the documentation, because sometimes like I work with this for a while, then I read about the refs and other stuff like month after I started working. So reading documentation might be a little bit annoying, but you actually learn a lot from like small things in React. And one of the things actually, like at the bottom of this document, I read and I had no idea that it works. So I've been working for React for like more than a year, and like there's a small thing that doesn't really matter, but it's cool to read the docs and know the small things. So HTML form elements, they work differently from the DOM. You have to, they keep the internal state, and you have to work with it in your component. And if you have an input field, there are different files, like the input field and the text area and select. They're called controlled components, meaning they have their own state.
Like this.
Like this. So if you want to override their own state, you have to send the state to them. And these fields, when you type, you do not see the value. I'm not sure how to explain this. Okay, let's go through this. They have the flow.
I think it's more about the control components need to have a value, as you're saying, like always a value, and in that way they are controlled. As the uncontrolled components,
Send null.
You can have
They don't have
basically
state.
a default. You can have what is called a default value, which is basically an initialization value,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have a value of itself in the
Indirect
in
component.
the tag element, which will be a text area, right?
Okay.
The HTML
So
text area.
So control here meaning I'm controlling the value with a value I'm sending to it from React.
Like for example, when you declare the input, you add a value to it. Like you have input inside the right, and you have a value. That's a control.
Yeah.
But you could also have, instead of having value equals submit, you could have
Value.
default value,
Okay.
which it's called an uncontrolled component.
Cool.
I mean, that's one of the. There's also probably other things that explain the differences between them, but I know this is one of them, definitely.
Are there any uses for not like uncontrolled components? I've never used one. Like I've never had to use one. Actually, just read about it. Like, okay,
Yeah.
that's cool, but I've never had to use it. So control components are basically components that you control their value, which that's the whole point to create the component
In
for.
other words, we can say that user have the control over the state. We have a state.
You by meaning control the value, that you get the value and you control, you set it, you set it yourself. Uncontrolled value meaning when you type, the component has its own control over the value and you do not set it yourself, which would like just be like an HTML text field that you just type, but you do not get the value in React. And the way to do it is just send null in the value in the initialization. Then you define this is going to be not controlled by React, not controlled by me. It's going to have its own state.
I think the uncontrolled components, it's more for the case where you have something like Redux that is holding the state of the whole application.
Yeah.
And it passes down. So the value itself, it's not in the component, as you said before. It's somewhere else. And in that case, you just give an initialization value, which will be the default value, which is then React knows that, okay, I'm sending it a default value instead of a value property. I'm sending a default value property. So I'm saying that this is an uncontrolled component.
But how would Redux send the data?
Well,
You have
the
to
way
send
that
If you send it, it has to send the state initially, and if you send the state, then it's controlled again. I think, I'm not sure.
well, if you send it through props, no, you're not setting this, you're not storing this. It's a stateless component. So by being stateless means that the state is handled somewhere else.
That's a good point. Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's most of the use for it. I think.
Cool. That's a good point. So yeah, so control variables typically maintain their own state, and React, the state is typically kept in the state of the component that contains the whole thing, and you update it with set state, like what we did. So this is a control component. We have our value and the state here, and we control what we send to it. We get the value from it and save it again. And this is, I think, what mostly we're going to work with the class today. So now the React state is the single source of truth. So if we remove, if I update the name like this, just make it a text field, and then I try to type, what the hell?
You didn't save it. Oh.
Okay. That's new to me. Cool, let's just stay with this. In my case, it would not even type because the state was not updated. Cool. So you can combine the two by making React state single source of truth. So you always know that the value of this component is this state.name. You're 100% sure about this. So an input form element whose value is controlled by React is a control component. Okay,
It's controlled by a React component.
Yeah, by the state of the component itself. So this is an example. You have a form, you have a value with an onChange, and then a submit button in the form. So on submit, again, just this with handle submit. It's going to be a function, and we could have a button here or an input type equal submit, where the value equals submit, and this will get when this button gets clicked, so not on every change. So handle submit equals on the E to console.log state is this state. So you would know that you would only see this. Let's make it an alert. So you can only send it. So when we submit, we get the values, they're all empty. So you only get this handler when you want to get the whole form. So if you have a form and you want to get the whole thing from the user, not just one field, you can use a form like this and have an onSubmit function with the input, and then have these fields that save in the component, and then call this contact form or whatever.
Do you guys understand how actually this submit is caught, like the event itself? Just one, because actually what happens here is that when you press submit, you send a value, and that is kind of attached to an event, which is the type submit, and then because in the form we declare on submit, which is an event that the form detects. On submit, run this function, which is the handle submit, and then the alert happens. So we are catching here. That's how the event is catched. I mean, it's just like a bit under the hood. Maybe sometimes it's
yeah. You guys have worked with forms, right?
Like we have a function called in the input.
In the form, like in the input type submit. When we submit, then the function
Because we have name, email, and message. We get these values when we press the submit button. Then the handle submit will be invoked.
yeah.
That function will be. So that.
because
But that's. I was just saying that what happens. I don't know if you guys already knew or what happens in the code is this. Okay.
because form by default when we submit, then it refresh the value, get the value, and submit. And on the submit event, we
calls the function.
call the function.
So yeah, when you click this button, the form
We don't have nothing now.
Yeah, the form catches it and calls this onSubmit hook by default. And here you don't need to get anything from the form because everything is already saved in the state.
Yeah.
So you could save everything in this state my object or whatever, and then you have your object here ready to be sent somewhere else, and you have the values. So yeah, is it confusing? Is it good?
No.
Cool. Let's continue. And you can always try this stuff in Coupon. I'm going to give you the example for the class as well. So I'm not going to go through this because you already know them. I've worked with them for like 2 classes so far. This is just they're telling us what kind of components we can work with. So text area is the field where you have multi-line text. Input is like this single text thing, and they all work the same. You have the value and you have one change. So this message, for example, could be type text area. It's text area. Yep.
I think
This
it
was
is
pretty
element, yeah.
It's, but there was another type here in the input, I think. So we have the text area field, and then we have other fields as well, like the select tag. And let's work with this example. So let's say we have these values, and this is the selected value, the coconut, and we can set the value here in the component the same way. Say this state let's call we can't just say value, we have to say like what does it call it? Type, I don't know. We can initialize it to be coconut. file, move this, it should work. And if I set it to line, so the default value here, so I have my options, and the default value is set from the state initially. And then I can have on change, and this would be this would handle input change. I'll just give it a name equal type. So this could be fruit or whatever. And then in the handle submit form, it's going to be from the state, so I don't need to do anything. So here I have this, I have 1, 2, 3, I have these. Then I'm going to choose mango. When I submit, I get the value as well.
Replace the code on Slack. So
What?
the code you wrote on Slack. Copy paste it on Slack.
I will copy paste it. Do you want me to copy paste it?
And
I will. I'm going to send the whole project as in the last class as well. So we're going to see I'm going to work on different stuff, so we're going to see it all here. Cool, cool. So we have this as well. We have the select, we can have multiple. You can try this at home if you want, so you can select multiple fields. We have the input file. When you select, you get the value as the file name. So
for input value, it's like the input file. You need to upload. It helps you when you're uploading.
well, I think the uploader is going to be something else. This merely gives you the file name that you need to upload. So let's say the name is attachment, and then there's not going to be any value, but on change equal paste with handle and the change. And then if we select this file and submit, it's going to show you the path of the file.
But not the content of the file.
None. Fake path. This is weird. So you use something else to upload the file.
But I see from there, it's like it takes the extensions and everything.
What is this? What?
I read a little bit about it from there, and as if they were saying you can use this to upload.
Upload file.
What
Yeah.
I can remember from what I read from that documentation.
Yeah, but this is not about uploading files, it's just about getting the value from fields. So if you have a file field and you have this, you should get the correct file name. I'm not sure why it's giving me a fake path. But this is definitely not the scope. So we're getting the value from it, and targeted name. So here's how we set the field dynamically. So we jump one step as well. So if we have multiple fields, we don't have to have different ones. We can just have a function and get the target, which is the element itself, and then target.value is the value of the target. Targeted name is the name of the field. And then in the case of checkbox gets the value from checked, not target. So if you have a form with a checkbox in it and you want to get this value from all of them dynamically, you just have this quick thing to get the value from checked if it's checkbox, otherwise get just the value. So let's give this a try. So let's say we have checkbox or check. Let's state checked. Let's handle. label, check here, the label, the name equal check, and then let's set check to be true by default. And here in our handle function, we're going to get the value differently. So const val equals if e dot target dot type equals checkbox, then I'm going to get e dot target dot checked. Otherwise, I'm going to get e dot target dot value. So when this is a checkbox, the value is saved in check. When it's anything else, the value is saved in value. So const target equal e dot target. You just call this element as well. So this is your element. And then you set the name with the val, and here you have l.name. So you get your element and you check if the element type is checkbox, type is checkbox, get the value from the check. Otherwise, get it from the value. Let's see here. So it's called check, not checkbox, I think. I haven't used these things in a long time. Let's just type checkbox. Add input type equal checkbox. And it is false, should be true. Then this, because it's check, not value. So I was initializing as value as the rest because I'm typing just fast, but it should be checked because this is the thing we read from the element, and we need to check in the state as well. So if we do this, we get checked true, and if we do this, we get checked false. And this weird file is still the same. Cool. So we have checked. We saw this partial state. So this is a simplified version of the thing I wrote in the state. So this is how we set the state like dynamically in the quickest way possible. But this we can do it like this. So set partial state, which is the thing we're going to update, just an empty object. Then we're going to set partial state of the element.name, the name that we want to change, equals the val. Then we send the state directly with the partial state. So we just write it in multiple lines so it'll be easier to understand. And let's see if this works. Mango checked false, and it works. Cool. And here we have the controlled input null value. So this is a special case. If you specify the value property on a control component, prevents the user from changing the input unless they desire so. Okay, so this is what I was missing. So in the name, if I set the value to read from the state, and then I did not update this name, it's not going to work. So here we said let's set it initially to blah. So it's going to read blah from the beginning, but then when I click, the onChange doesn't go anywhere, doesn't update this value, so completely controlled by the state. So when I type this, it calls the onChange with the new value, but nothing happens. So the value actually doesn't get back to the component because the state is outside. And if you keep doing this, it's not going to work. And not an uncontrolled input would be an input without a value completely. So this is, if we remove this, now it has its own state again, and I can type this, but I cannot get the value in my main component. So, not uncontrolled, controlled, but not gonna work as expected. You're not gonna be able to change the value, and then let's just leave this here. And this is the whole thing controlled, and we get the value and it gets changed. But this is the thing I actually just learned while preparing this class. If you set the value to null, it's going to be, the input is still editable, but you may have accidentally set the value to null. So if we have this, if we by mistake that the name to be null, and here we're going to do this. So we're going to set the value of the name, and we're not going to update the onChange. So we have a value that doesn't get changed. So now when we type, there's no onChange hook, so it should not change. But here our name is null. So if we do this, it's going to still change, even though I don't have the onChange hook. So this is a special condition. If I have the value set to it as undefined or null, if I set it dynamically and I just did not initialize it somehow, and when I type without the onChange handle it still works, it's because of the value is undefined or null. And this is the code to it. So here they send the value null statically, but if you read from something else that's null, it's going to do the same. It can be tedious to use control components because you need to write an event handler for each one of them. This becomes particularly annoying when you have converting pre-existing code base to React and turning React into non-React library. In these cases, you might want to check out uncontrolled components, an alternative technique for implementing forms. So uncontrolled components, I think this is in the advanced, but we could take a break and come back and take a look at it. So this is another way to get values from forms without state. It's an easy way, but it's like this is kind of complete idea, so we can take a look at this when we get back. You guys want to take a break, 5 minutes?
Yes.